Welcome to the Exposing Scientology podcast, where we delve into what really goes on in the world of Scientology and Scientologists, and sometimes take side journeys into other organizations that display similar traits. I'm joined today by Valerie Ross. Val has an absolutely incredible story of her life in Scientology, being in the Sea Org, being in the Guardian's office, spying on the FBI for the Guardian's office, working with Mary Sue Hubbard, and also some very harrowing, heartbreaking, and tragic stories of physical and mental abuse by her former Scientologist husband, who was protected by the organization. There have been a series of posts written by Val that have appeared on Tony Ortega's site. I hope that she has it in her to convert what she has written so far into a book, because I will be getting that book the instant that it comes out and lapping up every word, just as I have all that she has written so far. Val has a very unique ability to explain things about Scientology with an incisiveness and a clarity that is actually pretty rare. So welcome, Val. It's wonderful to have you joining me today. I've been looking forward to this for some time.
Hi, Mike.
Can you give us a bit, just sort of set the stage a bit, your background as a Scientologist and in Scientology, and then we'll sort of launch into some of the things that I want to address with you.
Okay, well, I actually joined Scientology in Salt Lake. I was greeted on the street corner by a guy named Steve. He just body router in Salt Lake. And I was with a friend, and my friend was like, no, going away. And Steve got me to go into the mission. And I was surrounded by a group of really good looking guys, and I was young. And they were like, come on, talk to us. And I said, well, I'll have to come back after work. Got to go back to work. Went back to work. They got me to come back in that, and I did the personality test. And then I started the communications course, and I was only in Scientology a really, really short time, few months. I think I got in March or April of 75. And by July or August of 75, Jack Dearman came on a mission for Sea Org recruiter. So I went through a bunch of courses really fast because I was actually dating one of the staff members, Steve, the guy that met me on the street.
Right.
So I spent any time I wasn't at work at Scientology. So I got through several courses, and I was already in the downstairs course room, which is where the advanced courses in Salt Lake. But Jack convinced me to join Sea Org. So I was in Scientology a really short time before I got recruited into Sea Organization.
Yeah, I get it. Jack Derman, that's a name I haven't heard for a long time. When I was the Supercargo FB, he was my Has.
Oh, no.
Yes.
He was actually Has in at Asho.
Yeah, that's what he came from Asho to the Flag Bureau with his wife, Irene. Irene actually became, at one point, the staff captain of the Commodore's aides. Any event, that's all ancient history that nobody really cares too much about. It's just fascinating when these names come up that are like, oh my God, I hadn't thought about Jack Derman forever.
Irene was my boss too.
Yep.
Yeah, she was in charge of Asho Day back when I was there.
Right. And pretty shortly after you were in Asho in 75 or 76, you went into the Guardian's office, right?
That is correct. I was in Asho Day from October till about July of 76. So I was only there a short time. I actually met Heber Jensch, the president. Still, according to Scientology, he's still their president.
Right.
Scientology. He was sitting in the lobby as I was coming back from dinner, and I was on course full time, still training to be a supervisor. And Heber was sitting there in the lobby, and he stopped me and, what are you doing? Who are you? Blah, 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 blah. Very friendly guy. And Yeah, we chatted for quite a while. And he's like, well, you need to come over to the Celebrity Center and meet my wife, Yvonne. And so I'm like, okay, I really didn't have to be on course. I had chosen to be on course during the night. So I went over there, and it became a thing where Yvonne and Heber and I would have dinner like once a week. And Heber would bring me back to birthing afterwards.
Right.
So Heber and Yvonne and I became really good friends.
Right. Well, I was very good friends with Heber. I mean, I worked with him for many, many years. And as you say, he is one of the friendliest, most likable chaps you could ever come across.
Right.
I didn't really know Yvonne very well. I knew her daughters and son way better than I knew her. I only met her sort of incidentally. But for anybody who's listening to this that doesn't know, Yvonne Jench, or Yvonne Gillum, was the woman who founded the Celebrity Center, the Scientology Celebrity Center in Los Angeles. And she was a very, very prominent figure in Scientology in the 60s and 70s, and was another a sort of, I think you described her somewhere, Val, as magnetic. I can't remember what word you used, but you used a word. I thought, oh, you captured her perfectly. She was someone that everybody loved. Everybody loved Yvonne, and she was a sort of a leading light in the world of Scientology for many, many, many years.
I know I did say shining light at one point too.
Oh, shining light. There you go. That's a perfect description.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to get into a bunch of this stuff, and I have a feeling, Val, that we're going to do more than one episode in order to cover all the things that I want to talk to you about, because I've got to say, reading what you have written in the various chapters that have been published on Tony's site, there are so many things that you have said that I go, that's exactly right. That's exactly what I wanted to say. Or that's exactly what I said over here or somewhere else in some earlier blog post I did. And I think that your perspective on things matches what my understanding now of Scientology is really, really well. And I took the time to go through and pull out a bunch of quotes that you from your write-ups, because I want to take up some of those and sort of use them to lead into the discussion that I want to have about various things, and hear what you have to say to further expand upon it. But the first is this.
Can I interrupt for one second?
Yes.
I restacked all of those to my Substack because Tony has so much else going on his.
Right.
So if anybody wants to read them all in order, I've got them on my Substack in order.
Okay, and how does someone find your Substack?
vross.substack.com.
Good. Excellent. Okay, I want to start with one sentence that you wrote, and I can't even remember which one it was in, but it to me, it sort of epitomizes and sums up something that is incredibly important, and we will talk more about this. But you said, what an irony it is that the biggest lesson you learn in Scientology is how to keep secrets, how not to communicate. Brilliant. That is a brilliant statement that does summarize Scientology. You actually go on, and it may not have been immediately following that, but you say, whether on staff or public, the con was to keep us all so busy, we didn't have time to consider how we felt. Going into session didn't change that. For anyone still laboring under the misconception that Scientology auditing will address how you feel about anything, it doesn't. Every person is asked the same rote questions, which don't address much of anything that ever happened in your life, and certainly not things of any relevance. And I know that that's not exactly the same as how not to communicate, but I just think that this idea of Scientology promoting itself as, we have the technology of communication, we will teach you how to be able to communicate with anyone on any subject at any time, that communication is the universal solvent, And yet so much of the mindset, the indoctrination of Scientology is into not communicating.
Exactly. You learn really, I mean, you have a communications course where the first thing you do is not talk.
Right.
Like, oh, just stare at this person and don't say any words. Okay. And then no, don't say anything. Don't tell that. If somebody says what's Scientology about, you aren't allowed to tell them. Okay?
Right.
Yeah. That's the very first thing you learn. And then you keep hearing communication is the universal solvent. Then why can't I talk?
Right. Why can't I talk about myself?
Ever, even in session. But then I remember, no, that's not the question I asked. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
I know it's like one of these things that Hubbard was so good at, and Scientology is so good at, of presenting a face to the world, which is actually the 180-degree opposite of what really goes on. You know, they've got this other one, learn to think for yourself. Oh boy.
Yeah.
If there is one thing in Scientology you do not learn, it's thinking for yourself.
Oh, no kidding. Yes. You learn the Scientology think, and if you think anything different than what Scientology tells you you are allowed to think, you're in trouble.
Right. Yeah, big trouble. I mean, it's not just well, we sort of turn up our nose at you or give you a frown. It's no, you the next thing you know, you're paying to have someone interrogate you about why it is that you're not in agreement with L. Ron Hubbard, or not in agreement with Scientology, or paying to have someone find your misunderstood words in order to explain why you don't agree.
Yeah.
It's the absolute opposite of thinking for yourself.
Correct.
Okay, now I want to go into, just because it fascinates me so much, the subject of your involvement in the Guardian's office. And, you know, obviously I have a great interest in this because I was the head of the department that took over from the Guardian's office when it was theoretically disbanded. And that was called the Office of Special Affairs, or is called the Office of Special Affairs. And the Office of Special Affairs operates on the exact same policies and directives that were laid out by L. Ron Hubbard for the Guardian's office.
Exactly.
And in fact, in Scientology, nothing really ever changes. It is chiseled in stone that Scientology is the words of L. Ron Hubbard, and nothing can alter those, nothing can change them, and L. Ron Hubbard is dead, so he can't change them. So Scientology is sort of stuck in a time warp. So if you go back to 1965 or 1966 and the founding of the Guardian's office, or 1975 and the Snow White program, all the policies, the ones that you mentioned, the attacks on Scientology, battle tactics, counterattack tactics, intelligence principles, those are all still the policies of Scientology and the policies of the Office of Special Affairs to this day, and they will be to the end of the organization. They're never going to change.
Yeah, the Guardian's office was supposedly disbanded because it was rogue, and yet OSA has the exact same policies. Same.
Well, of course, that was a PR line.
Oh, yeah.
The Guardian's office was replaced in name. And, you know, it was even presented to the world by Miscavige and me and others that all of the bad actors in the Guardian's office were dismissed. They were all like they were sent away.
Right.
Well, that sort of had some merit to it. There were a bunch of people who were no longer allowed to be on staff. like the people that went to prison.
Right.
They were not allowed to be on Scientology staff. But, you know, like the head of the intelligence bureau of the Guardian's office in New York is today the president of Religious Technology Center, Warren McShane.
Yes.
The head of the intelligence bureau of the Office of Special Affairs International for years and years and years, and she may even be the CEO OSA International now, Linda Hamill, was the deputy guardian US. These people, the guy who was an unindicted co-conspirator for kidnapping Michael Meisner, the person who went to the FBI and confessed to having infiltrated the IRS and was the source of the raids that occurred on Scientology. Brian Andrus, the guy who kidnapped him, put a tennis ball in his mouth and handcuffed him in the back of a car, was the recruiter for Religious Technology Center. Today, Brian Andrus is this very prominent public Scientologist in Clearwater who is lauded and feted by the International Association of Scientologists. So that was a big fat lie, like many big fat lies that Scientology tells. But I want to go back because I think your experiences are pretty remarkable. And you start out by saying, my initial training consisted of TRL, training routine lie, and all sorts of espionage techniques. I felt I was training for some special job. Hubbard had learned just enough about the espionage community to be dangerous. And he managed to convince us that the espionage community was after Scientology, and it was our job to protect ourselves from the big bad government. Smush.
Yeah.
So TRL is the subject of a lot of discussion on, you know, message boards and people. Tell us about TRL. You trained on it.
I was trained. Were you trained on TRL?
Yes, of course.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. I was sure you were, but okay. So I was trained how to lie convincingly. Somebody could come up to me and say, "Are your eyes blue?" And I could look them in the face and say, "Oh no, they're not. They're definitely not blue. They're brown. I've never had blue eyes." Well, they were staring into my blue eyes, and they say, "But your eyes, look at them. Look in the mirror. You are seeing an illusion. My eyes are not blue. Those are not, whatever you're seeing is not right. My eyes are definitely brown. I don't know what you're seeing, but those are not that's not what you're seeing." I could actually talk like that and be convincing. That's how I was trained. Somebody, and it got to the point where somebody could just, Mike, you walk up to you on the street and they go, "Does Miscavige beat you?" "No, heavens no. I know. He's the nicest, most sweetest, most kind, blah, blah, blah." Yeah, no, whatever. Oh, yeah. Are you happy in your marriage? "Yes." "Oh, it's spectacular. I've never been happier in my life." See?
I know. It is quite amazing that an organization has a drill to practice being untruthful in order to cover up what's really going on inside the organization.
In reality, everybody in Scientology is trained that way, though. Not as much as people in OSA and the GO, but you always have to be uptone. You have to be cheerful. You can't show your case. You can't show you're unhappy. If you were to walk in and you were in the worst pain ever, and somebody came up to you and said, "How are you doing?" You go, "I'm great. How are you?" "Oh, are you ready for course? Yeah, let's get going." You always had to pretend everything was great. Any Scientologist pretends a lot. Any Scientologist, and I actually, on some comment I made, I said something about, I don't really think Scientologists avoid medical doctors per se. They've just learned to ignore their body to a point that they don't even understand they're sick. They just kind of go, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, sure. You learn to lie to yourself about how you feel.
Oh, absolutely. And that lying to yourself is also a part of that original quote about you keep secrets.
Yes.
The lying to yourself is perhaps the most insidious part of Scientology. There is all this peer pressure and expectation that you have to kind of fulfill to the people around you in Scientology. Like, oh, yes, I just finished my grade 0 and I'm doing great. Oh, yes, I just did the purification program. And oh my God, you have no idea how calm and peaceful I feel. No matter what really is going on, you've got to say those things in order to continue to stay sort of out of trouble.
Exactly.
Because Scientology is a group, a structure, an organization that is based on fear that you are going to be next in the firing line. The target is going to be on you. If
Yes.
you say something out of line, if you're not acting appropriately, the consequences of doing so can be both expensive and traumatic. It just, that's the way of the world in Scientology. And so you tend to convince yourself that you're doing great
Exactly.
because you're around telling everybody that you're doing great. You're telling anybody who will listen to you that you're doing so wonderfully. So you've got to sort of make that true in your own mind in order to be convincing.
Right. Exactly. You lie to yourself as much as to anybody else.
Yep. Okay. I just want to go back to that statement that you made. Hubbard had learned enough about the espionage community to be dangerous. What do you mean by that?
He believed that he knew all about spies and spying. He believed that he was this, well, Hubbard believed he knew everything about everything. But he believed he was this super being who knew every spy organization in the world, and he knew how to infiltrate, and he knew how to get things done with spies, and how to create the world class spy. And that was what the GO and OSA supposed to be, are world class spies. And he, in his training, decided that he was going to train world class spies, but he was actually training people that are like, yeah, I mean, I think OSA and GO are probably, they being on the front lines, they learned that this is like, wow, this is kind of really, I think the OSA and GO are the ones most likely to blow, because we go, this is really not right.
Right. Well, yeah, but there is a lot of effort that goes into persuading you that, and you talk about it and I've talked about it, what's the greatest good for the greatest number of dynamics, and what, this huge battle for the very future of mankind, and we are the people that are standing against the oppressive, suppressive forces on planet Earth. And were it not for us putting up this good fight, everybody would have succumbed long ago. There is a lot that goes into convincing people, and particularly people that were in the Guardian's office and in the Office of Special Affairs and in Religious Technology Center now, that they are fighting a righteous religious war. Right. And in the righteous war, there is nothing that you can do that is not justified, as long as it is forwarding the objective of winning the war. So it's a really, really hard spot to be in. I look at all these people that are in the Office of Special Affairs today, people that I've known for a long, long, long time. And, with my perspective now being out, I look and I go, how can they still be buying the bullshit? How can they still be agreeing with what they're being told and thinking that this is the right thing to do? And I go, well, I did for a long time. And what results in someone having that realization that things aren't kosher and I shouldn't be here anymore is different for every person. And the threshold of what it takes is different for every person.
Yeah, it really gets in your head. It messes with your head. It's it's really weird to admit that I believe that stuff because that's not the person I am.
Right.
And, and that's the thing. It's like, why would I believe it's okay to lie? Why would I believe it's okay to do bad things, to spy on people, to steal paperwork from the FBI? Why would I believe that that was good? But when I was there, it was like, these guys are horrible. Even though they treated me amazing, they were nicer to me than my work compatriots, much nicer to me than the people in the GO.
I understand. In fact, I want to read another quote that I pulled that really spoke to me. You said, "For the whole time I worked at the FBI, I was a plant. I was a spy. I was the bad guy, but they were always nice, friendly, and genuinely happy to have me around. On my last day in 77, they threw me a surprise going away party and baby shower. These people I was spying on did that for me. It was the only baby shower I got for either of my pregnancies. It was also the only time during those years that I was praised for my work ethic and thanked for the job I did."
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
sums up Scientology and being on staff or in the GO or in the Sea Org in Scientology. It is a thankless task that you are pounded and hounded and have such enormous pressure put on you all the time. And the only thing that ever gets commented on is when you do something wrong or make a mistake.
Yep.
The amount of praise or acknowledgement or recognition or thought about your personal feelings or what would be the appropriate thing to do, like throw a baby shower for a pregnant woman, those things just don't enter the mind of Scientology stuff.
I didn't know baby showers were a thing until I left Scientology. I just like, oh, they do this all the time.
Yeah, me either, Val. Me either.
Yeah.
When Christy got pregnant with Jack and she said, "We're having a baby shower," I said, "You're going to go in the shower?" Like I like it was just like a completely. I had no idea what that was, and when she
Right.
told me, well, yeah, it's the friends get around and they celebrate the upcoming birth and give you gifts for the baby when it's born, and I'm like, wow, that's kind of nice.
That's really awesome. Yeah.
I'd never even heard the term.
Yeah. That's kind of really sad, honestly. You're
Yeah.
supposed to be making these people these great human beings, and that they never teach you how to act like a human being.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. You sum things up so well. I want to, before we go into what you actually did in the Guardian's office, I want to talk a bit about the subject of compartmentalizing information and the need to know. This is something that comes up often. There are people out there who think that because I was the head of the Office of Special Affairs or was involved in the Office of Special Affairs, I knew absolutely everything that went on everywhere all the time about every single person. I must have known this, I must have known this, that. And the concept of keeping secrets in Scientology generally, but in the Guardian's office and the Office of Special Affairs in particular is, I guess, it's hard to understand unless you've been there.
Yeah. Yeah. I could walk down a hallway and I could not tell you which people in that hallway in the basement of the manor actually belonged to the GO and which didn't. It was that compartmentalized. It was, yeah. It's
you actually said we were also highly compartmentalized. The level of secrecy, even among each of us, was elaborate. I didn't know which of us were or weren't GO. It was a don't ask, don't tell culture.
Yes.
We knew who our seniors were, and we knew which few people we could communicate to. Everything was on a need to know basis. Need to know is a catchphrase watchword of the GO / OSA world. And there is another part to this, which is the fear of reporting bad news up to your boss
Yes.
or your bosses. And an enormous amount of information in Scientology gets withheld, and more of the secrecy, more of the don't communicate, because when you have something that is bad, that is in an area that you are responsible for, you do not want to be reporting to anybody about this has happened until it's, quote, handled.
Right.
And you also mentioned somewhere, and I don't know where that quote is, but I pulled it out too. You said, in Scientology, you're either at the bottom or at the top. If you're at the bottom, you're getting crapped on from above. If you're at the top, you're trying to figure out who to crap on below in order to keep yourself out of trouble. The world of Scientology is compartmentalized, well, particularly the OSA GO is compartmentalized horizontally and vertically, like extremely so. And I just found it fascinating that you spent a good deal of time in the Guardian's office and being a spy, literally. And this is one of the things that you felt was worthy of commentary in your write-up, was that you didn't even know what the other people in the Guardian's office were doing or who was even in the Guardian's office.
That's so true, though. I mean, I knew Diana was in there, and most people didn't know that. I mean, that was a pretty well-kept secret. And
Right.
I knew Mary Sue, and I knew a couple of other people, and some of the people that talked to me, I didn't know by name, and I wasn't sure if I was even supposed to be talking to them. And I kept my communication very short and didn't say much, because if they approached me, it was kind of like, I need to find out if it's okay for me to talk to you. It was that secretive.
Right.
And yeah.
And it still is.
Yes.
And it remains that way for good reason. You don't want people knowing about what's really going on. You don't want people knowing, even if it's not illegal activities. You don't want everybody knowing that you're hiring private investigators to follow X, Y, and Z, or that this journalist is on the list of people to be looked into, or because who knows who, the loose lips may sink ships. Who knows who may say something wrong? Who knows who may defect? Who knows who might turn into the next Michael Meisner? Who knows? So this idea that information is kept only to those people that need to know about it is a sort of an inviolate rule of spy operations, just in general.
Right.
And you said that Hubbard considered himself the expert on spying. He read 3 or 4 books, which
Right.
he recommends, which I've read all those books. They're pretty old-fashioned stuff. And he claims to have been an intelligence officer in naval intelligence in World War II.
Okay.
And Russell Miller and John Atack and Chris Owen completely and utterly debunked that claim in their books. He was a cipher clerk for a little while, censoring letters home from sailors to make sure that they weren't disclosing any confidential information about their locations. He has written, you mentioned and I mentioned some of those policy letters, but there are a bunch of other ones where he talks about case officers and running agents and, how you go about spying on people. And like, this stuff is from the fertile mind of the mad science fiction writer who, like his forays into photography and horticulture and everywhere else, he picked up little bits of things and then expounded upon them as if he was now the leading expert in the world on the subject.
Yeah, I think it's more James Bond than anything else. It's it kind of almost sounds like he, okay, this is how James Bond did it. So he's like the master spy. This is how I'm going to train my spies.
Right. He mentions Ian Fleming somewhere. I can't remember where, but he has some positive comment about Ian Fleming, and I think he admired him greatly. And he certainly wanted to be the real life, whatever that lady is, M.
Oh, yeah.
Like he wanted to be the boss,
Right.
the person who understood the world of spying and spycraft and espionage and counterintelligence better than anybody, and could direct his minions, his loyal minions all over the place to do his bidding in order to, for the most part, what he was telling everybody was, this is to uncover and expose the worldwide conspiracy against me and Scientology.
Yeah, only he was actually creating a conspiracy inside Scientology to destroy the world or whatever. He was more of a conspiracy. And then he had all these people who were working at cross purposes because they had no clue what the person in the next room was doing. And yes, they weren't allowed to talk about it.
Yes, that's exactly right. And ultimately, that the audacity of his plans and the audacity of the people that went to carry out his plans, like yourself,
like me,
is what caused the downfall of the Guardian's office and Mary Sue going to jail, and the other people who were the leading lights of the Guardian's office going to prison. And it has always been remarkable to me that, and I want to now touch upon Mary Sue, because it's always been remarkable to me that Mary Sue and all of those other people in the Guardian's office did everything they possibly could to protect Hubbard during that investigation. Mm-hmm. Hubbard was an unindicted co-conspirator because the government couldn't get anybody to say he knew anything.
That is correct.
And none of the issues that he authored, except for the policy letters, but the Guardian's office issues, they're not signed by him. His name doesn't appear anywhere on anything. And he was very, very cagey and clever the way that he managed to keep himself out of trouble. Because the truth is, as you know, and I know, and everybody else who was involved at the time knew, he was absolutely, directly, personally involved in the activities of the infiltration of the United States government.
I didn't even put this in the story because we were taught to keep our damn mouth shut, and it was until 2011 nobody even knew I was in Scientology, because it's like I just kept my mouth shut because that's what I've been trained to do all those years.
Right.
But I actually at one point had been taken to see him.
No kidding.
Yeah. Blindfolded the whole, we're going over the rainbow, blah, blah, blah. And I actually talked to him personally at one point. And it was like, and he was talking to me about the whole thing. I'd gone through some really weird auditing. And it was kind of almost black Dianetics. And he was apologizing for what it had done to me. And that was all my fault. And this is how I'm going to make it up to you, by allowing you to go in and do this for me, for the FBI.
Oh my God. When was that?
This is just before I started with the FBI. This is just before I started training with the FBI. This is when Diana got me the job got trained at the Kelly services. So, yeah.
And where did you meet him?
My guess is La Quinta. I don't know. I was blindfolded. I did, it was some hot place, some middle of the nowhere place. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Do you
I
do you remember
don't-
what room you were in talking to him?
it was kind of like, it was a series of almost like a mini hotel or something. There were 4 or 5 different buildings, or they were rooms together, like a small mini hotel complex. And we went into one of those rooms. And it was in the desert, and I think it was in California because we didn't drive that far.
Okay. Wow,
That's
that's amazing.
I know. And it's kind of like yeah. So there you go. There's your little scoop. But yeah, but it was like, we just didn't talk about it. We didn't tell anybody. And yeah, and people go, yeah, you didn't talk to him. Okay. I actually tried to tell it on OCMB when I started telling my story, and they're like, you didn't talk to him. Yeah. You're a liar. Okay. Sure, whatever.
Yeah. Well, for a time at La Quinta, just so you know, Val, I was there at La Quinta too, and the place was basically supervised and run by Guardian's office people at the time. In the very early days of La Quinta, before Hubbard left in the middle of the night when they were feared a raid by the FBI after the escape of the Hartwells, there were Guardian's office, Bill Fosdick, Brian Rubinek, a bunch of other Guardian's office people were at La Quinta, basically handling security and being sort of in charge of the operation and making sure that it maintained the secrecy that it was supposed to have to protect Hubbard. And Mary Sue was there at the time, and Nikki Merwin and her personal staff were there, and it is not unrealistic to me to believe that in 1975 that you were taken to La Quinta and you saw L. Ron Hubbard. That is,
thank you.
He was interacting with Guardian's office people all the time.
Yeah.
It wasn't that this was this remote thing. This was
Right.
very important to him. He wrote the Snow White program and all the Snow White projects because
Yes.
this was so important to him. This was not a sideline activity. He met with Mary Sue every single day on the Apollo and had lunch with her where and nobody else was allowed in the room, and she briefed him on what was going on. And there are a bunch of recordings that he did with various aides and Mary Sue and other people talking about what was going on with the World Bank and the World Federation of Mental Health, and like in great detail, not like RJ-67 where it's just generalities, but in enormous detail about, and this person is here and this person is there and blah, blah, blah. And all of this information came from Mary Sue. And the reports that he got, he insisted on knowing everything that was going on.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Our reports had to be really darn detailed. If I would go anywhere and do anything, okay, I walked across the street. I saw this person. I did that. It's every word, every move you made was detailed in our reports.
Right. So let me just go back to Mary Sue because we touched upon her, and you have a paragraph that I thought was very interesting. You said, I need to state that I think that Mary Sue truly believed her husband's lies. I am certain she thought he was a well-educated, a decorated naval officer, and I know she trusted that the tech worked. She felt it her duty to further his work and protect him from harm. Mary Sue was a very smart woman. She was also a good 1950s style wife, leaving out the fact that she was already pregnant with Diana when she married ROH.
Yeah.
Okay, what leads you to believe that she bought the BS?
She didn't buy the BS. She was a good liar. she
was, taught to lie.
She was taught to lie, but she really did seem to love Ron, not just be married to him. There are people you go, okay, that person's married to that person. Yeah, but but she seemed to actually adore him. And I don't think if she didn't buy the BS that she would be able to do that. I may be wrong, but she talked of him almost like a schoolgirl. When she would talk about her husband, it was more like, my husband, with stars in her eyes, as opposed to, yeah, Ron said this, Valerie said this, blah, blah, blah. So when she actually just discussed her husband, it was a man she loved.
I happen to agree with you, Val. I happen to agree with you. And my reason for agreeing is, I interacted with her somewhat, but not a lot. I didn't have many conversations with her. I used to tiptoe past her office to make sure the damn dogs didn't bark at me, because that was considered to be an indicator that you were out ethics.
Dogs liked me. Yay.
Those stupid corgis, Trixie and whatever. But my reason for believing that is because even when Hubbard, towards the end, basically discarded her and didn't communicate with her any further, he disconnected from her. When he thought she was now a liability to him with the investigation from the federal government into her and her being charged, he basically didn't communicate with her again during her entire life.
Yeah.
And she ended up being put out to pasture, so to speak, in a house in Los Feliz in California, and never saw him again. Even when he was on his deathbed and he called for, Ray Midoff, the then senior CS International, to come up to his Bluebird motorhome in Creston to audit him, he didn't call Mary Sue. He didn't have Mary Sue brought to him when he was on his deathbed. He didn't have Diana brought to him. He didn't have any of his children. Nobody, just Ray Midoff. I believe that, and she remained staunchly loyal to him, even through that, going to prison, being interrogated and charged and, publicly pilloried and made into the scapegoat for everything that was wrong in Scientology. Even, there was a big effort to paint the Guardian's office as the source of all ills in Scientology by David Miscavige. It was a very, very carefully constructed campaign to do that. And that included making Mary Sue a non-entity, a non-person in Scientology. I mean, she's erased from every photo that ever existed of her anywhere in official Scientology publications.
That is so sad.
I know, you look in the Run mags, there is not a picture of Mary Sue Hubbard or of his kids anywhere. None. And she's been literally airbrushed out of some of them. And even then, she never said, well, I regret this, or I think that Ron was misguided, or anything. And the only way that you can maintain that view of him is if you still believe he is what he says he was.
Right, exactly. Right.
Because the minute that illusion is shattered, you go, well, wait, well, hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. A lot of things suddenly are making sense to me now.
Yeah. And she never once said that. She never once believed she was duped.
I know. And it's sad. And it's very sad. And, I have written a few things where I've talked about the value of Mary Sue was that she was really the last person who could tell Hubbard that he was wrong about anything. She had to be careful about it and sort of gentle in the way she did it. And she had developed over the 25 years of their relationship ways of doing so. But when she vanished from his world, I believe that he became more paranoid and more crazed and over the top than he had ever been. And that's saying something when you go back and read Dianetics and some of the others, OT3 and various other things. But when you start reading, Mission Earth and Pain and Sex HCOB and things like that, I mean, he lost it. And there was nobody to tell him, Ron, I think that you might want to think about this again. Don't put this out. And it's funny because Miscavige has followed the same pattern. Shelley was the only person for a long time that could tell David Miscavige, Dave, I think that you need to calm down, or I think that this is a little over the top, or I think once she was gone, no restraint.
Yeah.
So, we're already at 56 minutes and we haven't gotten anywhere.
Oh,
well, but I just want you to tell us a bit about what it was like going into the FBI as a Scientology spy, and then we'll save all the rest. I've got so much stuff to talk to you about.
Yeah.
Save all the rest for another episode. But when did you got a job at the FBI because you were able to type, right?
Right. I could type really fast, and so they trained me on the Mag Card 2 at Kelly Services, and then first I handed out cigarettes on the street corner for a week, and then I went to the FBI. That was funny. But I walked in, and I actually had a shopping list of things I was supposed to get before I even went in there. I was just given it to Diana, actually gave it to me. And I didn't ask why or anything. It was just like, just get these things from the files. And I didn't know where the files were or what I was supposed to do. And I had my macrame bag. Everybody had their big old macrame bags back then. And once you've been cleared by the FBI to go in their doors, they don't check you anymore.
Right.
I was like just a few months pregnant, but just enough that I was barely starting to show. And I just went in and they were all, okay, come on in. Here are the people you'll be working with. This is your place. If you need to get into the confidential file room, which is here, you have to get with one of these people to get the key. And once you get inside the file room, you lock yourself in there. So I would be alone in the file room with the door locked. Okay. So I go in, I get the things I need, and they actually had a copier in there. So I'd make the copies I needed in the file room, and I'd make the copies for myself. And then I'd get to my desk, and I'd be sorting copies at my desk, and I'd be putting copies for me, and then I'd have another stack that I could just throw in my bag. And because I had food in my bag and everything, I was pregnant, So
right.
I'd be going, and people would be standing at my desk talking to me. This is, I couldn't do this now. But they'd be standing at my desk talking to me, blah, 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 throwing these papers I'm stealing from the FBI in my bag, grabbing an orange while I'm talking to them and going on with my day. And they're laughing, talking to me, this kind of stuff. And I'm just like, okay. And they were just good people. They all really were. They were very kind to me. No, nobody suspected anything. I don't think. I may be wrong. But they didn't ever treat me as though they suspected anything. And,
well, I would suspect that the FBI didn't start suspecting that there were Scientology spies everywhere until after the raid.
Well, even after the raid, I wasn't treated any different. I went back there after the raid.
Yeah, but that, it wasn't. I don't think that they had enough time to really go through. I mean, when you read the sentencing memorandum from the prosecution of those people after the Department of Justice had finally gone through all of the documents, it is the most devastating indictment of Scientology and L. Ron Hubbard that you could possibly imagine. But let me just go back to one thing. So you got a job at the FBI, and that was all planned out by people in the Guardian's office. They knew that the FBI hired typists from Kelly Services, so they got you to go apply to Kelly Services as a typist, and somehow the FBI just happened to pick you?
Apparently you had to be Mag Card 2 trained, and you had to have they knew exactly the skills that had to be, and not many people could type as fast as I could, and you had to have it had to be a fairly fast speed. So they already knew. I think they probably had other people try.
Right.
I don't think I was the first one they sent, but I typed faster than most people.
I got it. So they knew this is what the FBI is looking for when they hire typists. You filled the bill, so you were a real valuable asset for the Guardian's office at that point, and they got you trained on the special IBM Mag 2, whatever that thing was
Right.
that you mentioned, and sent you to Kelly Services, and you show up there and say,
Kelly
I can
Services
type
training.
100 words a minute on an IBM Selectric Mag 2, blah, blah, blah. Find me a job.
Kelly Services trained me on the Mag 2.
Oh, they did?
Typing test, yeah.
Oh, I get it. So who paid for that?
FBI.
The FBI paid for your training?
Yes, on the Mag 2.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible.
$4.15 an hour. Which
Okay.
was better than I was getting paid at the GO. Let's get real.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, look, Val, I appreciate your time and some of your incredible insights, like meeting L. Ron Hubbard. You know, people, I didn't even know that Diana was with Mary Sue down in Los Angeles at that time working on geo matters. She had been at the base, but she went off and, quote, left the Sea Org. You know that, right?
Yeah,
And then
she recorded an album.
Yeah, she went and married John, whatever his name was, and recorded an album and was down in LA doing that. And I thought that's what all she was doing.
Right.
It's very interesting to me to hear because it never made total sense to me. Like, there are shore stories that are invented for everybody.
Right.
Everybody who disappears or goes off to do something, or, you know, there is a reason that is offered as the explanation. And I remember this, oh yeah, Diana, she left the Sea Org, she married John, I can't even remember his name, to go pursue her music career, and she recorded an album, and then she's back in the Sea Org.
Yeah. Well, you know, I was a declared SP when I was in the GO.
Right.
Yeah. I didn't even know I was declared, though. They told my students on the briefing course, but I did not know that.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's so nobody would contact you.
Yeah.
That's so nobody would reach out to you and say, "Hey, Val, what's happening? Where are you? What's going on?"
Yeah.
That happened with a lot of people that were operatives for the Guardian's office, and even for the Office of Special Affairs. Like Ray Midoff's brother, Bob Midoff, and his wife, Sammy, were staff at La Quinta. They were Sea Org members, and they became the spies in the David Mayo splinter group in Santa Barbara. And everybody in the Sea Org was told they'd been declared, that they had gone, and actually they were being run by RTC, Warren McShane, as a matter of fact, as spies on David Mayo in his center in Santa Barbara.
Wow. I actually had a briefing course student looking for me. He wanted to find me so he could make sure I was safe. So
that's cool.
And there it was right there across the street from the manor. But but he actually has told me in the last few years. So it's like, it's amazing what, So okay, so we're going to have to do another one of these, obviously.
Yeah, maybe more than one. There's so much more stuff that you have, so many more fascinating stories and experiences, and some of them not so funny, that I really want to get into, and your perspective about other stuff. But I thank you for taking the time to talk with me today, Val. It's been a true pleasure. It's nice to reconnect with you in some ways. We haven't been in touch for a long time. Way back when I started my blog, you were around and helped me with a bunch of things. And I wish you nothing but the best and a happy life. And we will talk again very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. You can find more episodes of Exposing Scientology wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to check out my best-selling book, A Billion Years. My Escape from a Life in the Highest Ranks of Scientology. It's available on Amazon, hardback, paperback, and an audiobook. Until next time, be well and happy.